Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this press conference by members of the Chicago Teachers Union, as well as the elected officers of the Teachers Union, CTU here. This morning there was a press conference by school and city officials, and we're here to kind of also give our take on the plan to bring back students on January 11th, and we have a number of rank and file teacher and educator members here to address this question. And we also actually have a parent as well, and I'll be asking them to introduce themselves. So the first speaker this afternoon is Lily Fryer. Lily, good afternoon.
Hi, thank you. My name is Lily Fryer. I teach third grade at LaSalle Language Academy. I have a lot of concerns with returning in person. I am in wave 2, which means I am expected back in my classroom on January 25th with my students to return the following Monday, February 1st. Remote learning, it's hard, it's challenging, but we've been doing it for almost a semester now. So sending us back in with what will be 1 week remaining on this school calendar shows me CPS hasn't put a lot of logical thought in this if they're having my students come back in the classroom 4 days before the semester is over. We're destroying the routines, the procedures that we have going in remote learning with a week to go in the semester. Yesterday was the deadliest day of the pandemic yet. Over 4,000 Americans died yesterday. That's insane numbers compared to where we were in March, but we're thinking that it will be better somehow and we're safe to go back in. There aren't answers for a lot of these things. It doesn't make sense when the teachers at my school this week asked about air purification and safety. We were told that only classrooms with students in them would get air purifiers. So speech pathologists, I'm guessing the kitchen doesn't get those, students aren't in there. And that all of our classrooms with windows that open would need to have their windows open 2 inches all day. It's Chicago. It is very believable that we could have a blizzard within the next 8 weeks and I would be in my classroom with my windows all open, hoping that's enough to either weigh out frostbite or COVID. At LaSalle, we have a lot of high-risk staff that don't feel comfortable with it. I personally have a 6-month-old. If I am forced back into the classroom, I will be stuck deciding between infecting my 3-year-old and my 6-month-old when I come home. I will also lose my childcare. I'm in a nanny share and we've all quarantined, or having to leave the job that I love, that I find value in, and that I do my best at every day to either stay home to keep my family safe or continue working and have my 65-year-old parents from out of state come here to try to watch my children. It is an impossible decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. All right, next I'm going to call on Ian Smithdahl, who is a parent at Mrs. Fryer's school. Ian, good afternoon.
Hi, yeah, my name is Ian Smithdahl. I have 2 children in CPS schools, and over the years we've been at 5 different schools. I've seen, a lot of things. I've met a lot of teachers, and I completely support them. I think that there are kind of 2 questions at play here. One is whether or not it's safe for the students to return. For answers to that, I defer to medical professionals. But the other question is whether or not it is a conducive learning environment with the current plan that we have. And for that, I defer to the teachers. If I trust the teachers with my children for 7-8 hours a day, 180 days a year, I also have to trust them when they say that, we're under the current plan. My understanding is that teachers won't be able to approach the students in the same way. They'll have to socially distance throughout the day. So they won't be able to look over their shoulder and help them on things, and they won't be able to, help them tie their shoelaces and things like that. And when the teachers say that that's not going to be a good environment for the students to learn, as a parent, I have to weigh that very heavily.
Thank you, Ian. Our next speaker is Diana Mohammed. Diana, if I could ask you just to say a little bit about yourself and tell us about your situation. Thank you. Good afternoon. You're muted.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Diana Mohammed, and I am a PE and dance teacher at Beasley Academic Center. In December, I reluctantly signed my intent to return, just unsure and uncertain about the plan, given that it was rushed at the beginning of the school year when we were one of the last school districts to decide to stay remote, and then now feeling rushed to return back. That was probably minor compared to what I feel now, because over the winter break, my life was devastated when my daughter, who was sick with various symptoms all over the place for an entire week, woke up one morning and could not see. And so that landed us in the emergency room, and then transferring into the pediatric unit, and then finally in the ICU for a week, only to find out that my daughter had COVID and that she has what is called MIS-C, which is multi-system inflammatory syndrome due to COVID. And to my surprise, I had no idea that she had COVID because, like many children, she was asymptomatic. And this particular syndrome, it's only affecting children and young adults and happens 4 to 6 weeks after they've come in contact with COVID. So this changes my entire perspective, because we're being told that children are not affected. Children do not have the same result as we're seeing adults. But here I am in the ICU seeing my child organs, major organs, being attacked from the inflammation in her body. And so, as I'm told, this is rare, and no, I have not heard of this, and many people that I've talked to have not. How long will it actually be rare if cases continue to rise? I did ask, what is the demographic that we're seeing of this happening? And of course, like other COVID cases, it is Black and brown. And so now I am seriously concerned about us rushing back without having a well thought out plan, being the third largest school district in the country. I think it's very irresponsible to compare what other school districts are doing and how successfully they're doing it, when we, being such a large school district with so many different types and sizes of schools, are rushing and not properly prepared. So I want teachers and parents and the community to know that this virus is seriously affecting children, and children can have these negative results and we not even know it because they are asymptomatic. And so I think we should all take a step back and look at seriously putting some thought, the city seriously putting some thought and proper planning into safely sending our students back, so that we can go get back to what we love, we miss our students, and provide a quality education as opposed to rushing back in fear. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. And if I could just ask, because you didn't mention it, is how old is your daughter?
My daughter is 5. And so now she's actually at risk, because she, if she gets the flu or if she gets any other type of virus, this can be detrimental. So I am very cautious of me going back into a building and bringing anything, not just COVID, back to my daughter at this point.
Thank you, Diana. Our next speaker is Siobhan Coleman. Good afternoon, Siobhan.
Good afternoon to each and every one of you. My name is Siobhan Coleman. I'm a pre-K teacher assistant at Lundale Community Academy. There's so many concerns and so many unanswered questions that I don't understand how our mayor and our CEO of CPS could get pressed to think that these buildings are safe. We had a meeting with our administration, and we learned that there were some purifiers in the building. Some classrooms have purifiers, but you're expecting all staff at some point to come back. So what does that mean? That means that either you're ready or you're not. 6 purifiers absolutely cannot cover the building in which we teach. And learning too that our pre-K children will not be able to eat in their classrooms anymore. They have to go through the lunch line. That's called exposure. I haven't heard anyone say that purifiers are in the cafeteria at all. So I haven't heard that. I've only heard about purifiers being inside of classrooms. And again, not all of those classrooms having purifiers. Also, I've never heard our principal say, "I don't know," so many times since I've known her. So to me, that means that communication has been lost between CPS and the people who man these buildings. And when you go to your admin and you ask questions, you expect them to know, but CPS has not kept them in the loop. And so that means that we're not kept in the loop of everything that's going on. We've had issues with them talking about what other districts are doing and how come we're not back. CPS has not put in the measures that other districts have put in. Thinking about Naperville, they're thinking of implementing, well, they're not thinking of it, they're implementing a saliva test weekly for their staff and for the children. CPS has not taken that measure. We cannot be compared to other people. Every district has its own issues. If our parks, outside or inside, if our bars, if our restaurants aren't open at this moment to the public where people don't spend 7 hours a day, why is it that they think that it's okay for us to go into buildings and spend 7 and some of us 8 hours? Because real teachers, which that's what we are, we go to work early and we leave late. And so why is it that you think it's okay for us to be in these buildings when bars and parks and restaurants are all closed? Parents are still having questions of what will the school day look like? And if the teachers are not in the classroom, who's going to be in the classroom with my child? Is this person going to be certified? Parents still have questions. So we all still have questions. And then who wants to teach on eggshells? When you used to get a call for a sniffle, we used to think, oh, I'm coming down with a simple cold. But because COVID is also psychological, the first time someone coughs or sneezes, we're going to be ready to go home because we don't feel safe in these buildings. You know, and I think that we protect each other by first protecting ourselves. Even when you take a flight, they'll tell you if we experience a lot of turbulence or if something should happen, Lord forbid, if this plane goes down, you first reach up and grab oxygen and give it to whom first? Yourself. And then you administer to others. And so we have to be safe and we want to be comfortable. School is a community. So how do we unteach them the things that we've taught them since school has existed about sharing spaces, about socialization and all of these things? And school is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be stressful. So I'm just asking that the mayor and CPS and all of the oppositions come to reality, that school is a place where we come together as a community. And until it's safe to do so, I refuse to go back into the buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Siobhan. Okay, our last speaker before we turn to Q&A from the journalists is Deanna Myron. I just want to say one other quick thing about that. For the journalists who are here, if you'd like to ask your question live, you can use the hand raising function to indicate that you'd like to do so, but you can also use the Q&A panel to type out your question and I can read it out. So we'll be doing that after Deanna speaks. So go ahead, Deanna. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks, Eric. My name is Deanna Myron. I'm a clerk, and I have refused to go in since August 26 when I was told I had to into a building that had nothing set up. And I'm scared. I'm scared. And just like Siobhan was saying, we have so many questions that no one has answers for. I said it before, I'll say it again. No one could put their finger on this, and our lives are at stake. I am getting docked my pay twice a week right now because I do have 3 days to stay home on my accommodations. So it's about 40% of my earnings. And, you know, I'm not going to put a dollar on a life. You know, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it home. I'm going to do my job and do it to my best I can. And I just wish that everyone would listen to what an arbitrator had said in court. You know, it is not safe for the clerks to go in. She said it twice, you know. So if an arbitrator is saying it's not safe for me to go in, why would it be safe for students and teachers? I'm happy and glad to be part of a union that has been there for me. And I'm going to say that again, this union has been there for me since the day I called, since the second I felt I wasn't safe. And I'm here today telling everyone we need that solidarity to keep everyone safe. You might feel safe going in, but your sisters and brothers don't. And we have family members. I have a family member who has cancer. I will never forgive myself if I brought that home. And I do my best. And if you know me, my coworkers know me, if anyone wants to be back by that school, it's me, my students, everybody. I miss them, and I'm going to keep fighting till I know it's safe for everybody. So thank you again for having me in solidarity.
Thank you, Deanna. Okay, we're going to turn to some questions from our journalists. We're really going to be trying to highlight some of the stories that are being shared here, especially initially. So please keep that in mind. So let's see, I've got a question here that is kind of off of this topic, so I'll come back to that one in a moment. And you can, like I said, you can either put your hand up using the hand raising function. There we go. There's Carla Leal. You are able to speak. Go ahead, Carla.
Hi. My question is for the teachers today.
If you could, by the way, mention the media outlet that you're
listening to. Oh, Carla Leal with Telemundo Chicago. Hello, everyone. Just wanted to ask the teachers, how do they feel hearing CEO Janice Jackson saying that those that do not show up to school will not get paid?
Speaking for myself, I can say that tells me the CEO does not care about my health and safety, does not care about the health and safety of my students, but is making me decide between getting paid and supporting my family or life and death of myself and my family. It seems like a pretty heartless comment during a worldwide pandemic.
I'll also take that question. The level of care that come from the people who run this system, it really sucks. I'm trying not to be emotional. My 6-year-old nephew was the first person in my family to contract COVID. I've had 4 other family members since him, with 2 of them right now in ICU. And if they don't think that that's enough of a reason to not open schools, then that's more than heartless. The fact that they sent out these surveys, but they're not listening to them, that's the part that does it for me. Why send out a survey to check the temperature of what's going on, especially when you already know? But you do these surveys, you send them to us, but then you don't listen to the people at all. So I feel bullied. I absolutely do. Because you act like you're giving me an option when you send me a survey with choices, with options. But then you tell me that I don't have an option. We are not games. We are not meant to be played with. This is real life. And if they would value people's lives more than they would value a dollar, we would truly not be in this situation.
Thank you, Siobhan. Appreciate you sharing that with us. Others on this question? Okay, I'm going to take the next question I have from, I'm going to try this name. It's Charlie Wojciechowski, I believe. There's a lot of consonants there. He asks, what are the circumstances that you would like to see in order to return to school? What does CPS have to do to make you feel safe?
I think one thing would be setting a metric. I don't know of another district or a district our size especially that hasn't said, if cases get above this %, we will go back remote. It's insane to me that at this moment in the pandemic, with this many cases every day and this many deaths, that we're talking about going in. It feels crazy. I would feel safer if CPS said, we all want what's best for our kids, right? But if they said, if it goes above a certain %, that would make me feel better. If they listened to teachers, parents have a choice if they're sending their students back or not. Teachers do not have a choice if they're staying remote or hybrid. I think there's a lot of things that go into that.
Eric, if I could follow up on that quickly. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Thad Goodchild. I'm Deputy General Counsel for the Chicago Teachers Union. The COVID-19 positivity rate in Chicago today is almost 11%. And there are over 1,000 new COVID cases on average every day right now. Governor Pritzker announced yesterday that teachers in Illinois are going to begin getting vaccinated within the next few weeks. President-elect Biden announced today a plan to rapidly increase the distribution of the COVID-19 vaccine once he's inaugurated, and a plan that would allow teachers in the country every teacher in the country the opportunity to be vaccinated so that schools reopen within the first 100 days of his administration. But rather than taking the prudent and safe approach, taking a step back and prioritizing safety, the mayor and CPS are lying to the public about their reopening plan and threatening public school educators with withheld pay and disciplinary action if they exercise their rights to protect their safety and the safety of their families and their students, as you've heard our members talk about so far on this press conference. The Los Angeles Unified School District has a COVID-19 testing plan in its agreement with its teachers union. That plan calls for baseline testing of all students before the resumption of in-person learning. And that testing is underway right now in LA. And LA just announced that it is having to put its reopening plan on hold because at some schools, 1 out of every 3 students was testing positive for COVID-19. CPS's rush of this plan is dangerous. They've had almost 700 actionable COVID-19 cases in school buildings already, and that is without students in them and with only skeleton crews. And we've made a proposal to CPS that would allow for real safety and allow for a better educational experience prior to vaccination than CPS's current plan. Under our proposal, there would be 2 potential paths to resuming in-person learning. The first is that the demand that we've made all along. The city needs to get the COVID-19 positivity rate below 3% and the number of COVID-19 cases below 400 per day. Alternatively, under our proposal, CPS would delay the resumption of mandatory in-person learning until all employees have the opportunity to be vaccinated. And as I mentioned before, the governor and the president-elect are saying that that is going to be soon. In the meantime, we proposed that in-person instruction could resume with CPS pairing faculty and staff who opt to return on a voluntary basis with students who have opted for in-person learning, provided that CPS adheres to strict health and safety protocols, which our members that have been in buildings so far this week say they are not right now, and provide weekly COVID-19 testing for all in-person staff. This is a rational approach. This is the approach that the Illinois State Board of Education superintendent is encouraging. CPS's approach is not. And CPS and the mayor need to walk back from the ledge before more people unnecessarily get sick and die.
Thank you, Thad. Okay, actually, I have a question from Adriana Cardona from WBEZ. She asks, and this is for the teachers and educators who are here, can you talk about the letter sent to you last night threatening to severely discipline any teacher or staff who discourages parents from bringing their children to school Monday? Well, what would you, what's your response to CPS when you hear that?
My response is just the same that I teach my students. You have to speak truth to power. I don't think a single educator is telling lies when we talk to our parents. I certainly at LaSalle have not said anything untrue to a single parent. I haven't reached out and encouraged them one way or another, but I have wanted parents to have a true picture of what their child's day at school would be like returning.
Also, I'd like to say that at least we're attempting to answer questions that they have not answered.
Someone else? I heard
Yes,
someone. Yeah.
I was going to agree with what was said before. It seems like another bullying tactic, and it's unfair to even assume that we would be discouraging people from attending, but more so just informing them of what's really happening. And I think parents deserve to know that. Most of us teachers are parents. And in my case, I have been going out of my way to inform people of this syndrome that my daughter has, because like I said before, I've never heard of it. Many parents have not heard of it, and they need to know what symptoms to look out for. I was told in the hospital that most people don't know, and their children end up having to go straight to the ICU, as opposed to, I went early, at the site of something happening with my daughter, and they were able to find it. But, if we don't have information and parents don't have information, they can't make informed decisions as to what's best for their children. So I think it's only fair that we continue to give information so parents can make informed decisions.
Thank you, Diana. Anyone else on that? Okay. Actually, let me take Hannah Leone from the Chicago Tribune asks, for the educators on the call, would you vote to strike if such a vote were taken under the current circumstances, and why?
I would like to answer that question with a question. Why is it that every time we ask for something, we're not demanding, we're merely asking for people to listen and for people to respond properly? Why is it that educators have the hardest time? Why do you force us to fight or to strike? That's my answer for that question.
Thank you, Siobhan. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna ask, Adriana has a second question. Let me get to that one next. She says, there were comments made by CPS officials this morning, I think she's referring to at their press conference, about the union moving the goalpost during reopening negotiations, citing CTU demands that included housing and police-related issues. Can you clarify or respond to this? Could be Thad or could be anyone.
Maybe I'll just say something about that briefly. This negotiation has first and foremost been about safety, equity, and trust. We've been really clear about that, both with our members and with the board. We don't keep two sets of books. We voted our bargaining demands among our membership. The CTU does make demands about our students facing eviction. We do make demands about the social and emotional needs of our students. We've been consistent about that. We've done that for forever, and we're not ashamed of that. But it's disingenuous to say that that's what's holding up these negotiations. Really, like, we've been very clear that the thing that we need to be able to start school is a plan that adequately addresses our safety, that can address student equity, especially the way student equity is looks under remote learning, and that we can trust.
Thanks, Jesse. And for those who don't know, that was Jesse Sharkey, president of the Chicago Teachers Union. That's one person I could do the introduction for. Okay, I don't know, Thad, if you had anything else you wanted to add there or anyone else. Okay. Let's see. Patty Wetley, I'm not sure what outlet they're with, but question is, CPS says remote working isn't learning, so that the return to in-person learning is necessary. To the educators on the call, what could be done and what hasn't been done to date to improve remote learning?
I can speak to that. I think we haven't been given the opportunity to perfect remote learning. There are many aspects of it that are working and many that are not working. I'm sure that my experience will probably be different from the other educators because I'm a PE teacher. But I know that when we return, we will be so limited to the point where it doesn't make too much sense to, one, be limited in what we can do in person and then be at risk for our safety. So my rationale was to continue to perfect remote learning by making some of these systems talk, like Google Classroom and Aspen. We kind of do double work there, grading on 2 different systems. There are a lot of programs and resources that we are just starting to learn because as educators, we like to perfect what it is that we do, but now we're being forced to rush into a totally different plan that would consist of dual teaching. So I think that if we were given the opportunity, we could actually perfect remote learning to make it as effective as it can be and still be safe in the process.
Thanks. And there's kind of a follow-up that's related to that, comes from Cassie Burke, I believe she's from Chalkbeat. What sort of training have the educators on this call received, either on protocols and safety, for returning to the buildings, or in terms of simultaneous learning? Officials, school officials have been saying that there's training happening around both these areas. What has been your experience? Have you been getting any of that training?
I would just say sending out a webinar video that's 2.5 hours long is not training. If that's how I taught my students, I just pressed play on a video and said, okay, learn math. I'll come back to you in 2.5 hours. People would be in an uproar. We're expecting that all of the teachers who are heading back are going to feel safe and comfortable when we're being trained on PPE and how to stay safe in schools in a 2.5 hour webinar.
Thank you, Lily. Others on that question about remote learning, making it better, or simultaneous learning, what training there is, or on safety measures going back to schools? Okay. I'm going to take one other question, kind of just on the bigger picture, and then I think we're going to bring it to a close here. So let me kind of combine a couple of questions here. So I'll kind of combine questions from Dana Kozlov at CBS and Hannah Leone from the Chicago Tribune. So with today's ultimatum about docking pay, where does that put a timeline for next steps? Things like a strike vote for the CTU. And what do you say to the 77,000 who are, have indicated that they want to return? So yeah, I'll just leave it there.
I am growing weary of this expectation that our union has to go on strike in order to get a safe reopening plan. The safe reopening plan is, quite frankly, the responsibility of our mayor, who is in control of our school district. It should not take a work stoppage for workers, for teachers, for clinicians, for parents, quite frankly, to feel safe. And let me be clear, the overwhelming majority of our families, Black families, brown families, have chosen safety. Juxtaposed to that, we have said clearly since the summertime that we have members who want to return. We know that. We want to make it safe for them to return, and we could match those members with families who also want to return. We've also said that we're close to a vaccine, which is a fairly recent development. And because we're close to a vaccine, we would be willing to figure out what it meant to innovate, reconstruct school calendars. Here's the bottom line. School will never be the same after this pandemic. Just like after the 1918 pandemic, schools started to get school nurses. That is a byproduct. That is an impact of the last pandemic. The fact that we cannot innovate, reimagine, compromise, figure out, clarify, make people confident and safe is a failure of our mayor's leadership. That is the bottom line. And beyond that, I take offense to being told that we cannot advocate for housing insecure students and their families. I take offense that our mayor doesn't even know that we teach on Google Meets and not on Zoom. I take offense that she doesn't know that families are picking up these meals from the schools and taking them home. We are berated for understanding the details of this deadly virus, for defending our rights to survive. And you can't even understand what we do every day.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm going to take any further responses on the questions about timeline and responses to CPS's threats and ultimatums and things like that, as well as any last kind of closing brief comments, and then we'll wrap up. So any other further answers to the questions that were posed or final comments at this time?
Eric, I'm a CPS parent. I know Stacy's a CPS parent. Other folks, I had to get in the call late, but I think we have other CPS parents on this call, right?
Yes, we have at least one, yes. Well, a number of teachers who are also, like you and Stacy, parents. Yeah, everyone who's a parent of a CPS child can raise their hand.
I'm a grandparent.
I think that it's, I don't think it's helpful to be pitting us against parents. We want what parents want, which is good quality education for our students. We want our children to be safe. We want this to make sense. We don't want to be manipulated and lied to about what we're doing and why. I have no doubt that the reason CPS is ask parents to make a commitment now, to commit that they could say they were going back, and they would have to say yes to going back in order to keep open the option to come back or not come back, right? And you have to say yes in order to have the option. If you said no, you didn't have an option. That's to drive a PR number, right? I mean, it's like saying, you want to learn how to swim, well, commit to jumping in the deep end of the pool. That's not how people learn how to swim. People learn how to swim by playing around the shallow end of the pool, and they see other kids, they see it's fine for someone who already knows how, and then that's what makes them want to get in the water. Going to school in a coronavirus pandemic should be the same thing. You should allow, you shouldn't have made parents make that choice. You should have said, we're going to let you opt back in, when we can demonstrate that it's working. And this is behind our proposal about making return voluntary. Would have been a lot less trauma for everyone involved. That among other things. I also think that we've raised a lot of concerns about, for example, the quality of remote instruction for the majority of parents that have continued to say that's what they want. I'll stop there, but I think there's a lot more to say about the question of parents.
Thank you. And in fact, I did want to also ask just Ian, if you could also be thinking about perhaps in part the answer to that question, what would you tell the 74,000 parents who are thinking about returning over the next few weeks? But before I jumped in, there was someone else who was starting to speak. I don't know who that was.
I was, but I'll let Ian. If Ian is ready, he can go. Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of parents, and parents like the teachers, we have a lot of different situations. For some parents, it's very hard to, accommodate remote learning. But I have to agree with the other speakers. Like when I hear that communication between teachers and parents is being discouraged, I that's the lifeblood of this relationship. That for me to be able to speak with my teachers and get an understanding of what my son's life is going to be like, that's crucial, that's critical. And you can't do anything to impair that relationship.
Thank you. Crystal, by the way, is the recording secretary for the Chicago Teachers Union. Crystal Williams-Hayes. Hi. Oh, you just muted yourself somehow, Crystal.
Recording secretary. And I want to say that I am, of course, a PSRP for life. I was a school clerk 17 years prior to doing this. So I was in the building. I am also the mother of 3 girls and a grandmother, believe it or not, of a 12-year-old who attends Chicago Public Schools. So I am a stakeholder in this. And I sit here perplexed in listening to a lot of what's been said. And like Deanna, like myself, is the daughter of a retired clerk, and so we are second generations of this, and we took this to heart. We stuck around because we saw our mother working hard in this work, and we thought that it had some value to it. And we thought that we would do it and, get something out of it, and to see what CPS is doing to people and making people now have to decide to live really or die in a sense, and you look at PSRPs like Siobhan, who says that, she has to make a decision. Nobody should have to make a decision to go to work or stay home or put food on the table or be evicted or deny a bill or try to figure something out. Nobody should have to do that. Nobody should have to worry about being threatened because they're telling or giving truth to power, like Lily shared earlier. You shouldn't have to deal with a threat of that. And it's unfortunate that we have to deal with this in this system. It's unfortunate that CPS has the nerve. It's unfortunate that the mayor would come on this late in this process and so compassionately thank everybody for all the work that we've been doing forever and ever and a day. We appreciate that, but it's kind of late in the game. We've been in here. We've been doing this. And to force people to do this and make these decisions is ridiculous. Clerks won a decision that they can work remotely and go into the buildings one day a week. The arbitrator ruled that, yet CPS ignores that and still are threatening clerks and forcing them in the buildings to work, clerks and tech coordinators. This is kind of crazy, but I want to encourage you all and say you're doing a great job. Stay on the wall. We're going to pull through this regardless of what they're saying. Trust me when I say we're doing what we have to do. You do what you have to do to survive. You do what you have to do to protect you and your family, Diana. You do what you have to do, Lily, to protect your family. You do what you have to do, Siobhan, to protect your nephew and your other family members that are in ICU. Deanna, you do what you need to do to protect your family member and your daughter. Ian, you do what you need to do to protect your child. And we will do what we need to do to protect the members of the Chicago Teachers Union, because enough is enough. Nobody should have to make a decision to live or die, to go to work or stay at home, not be compensated or be paid. Enough is enough.
Thank you, Crystal. And I do want to try to sneak in one last question from Sarah Carp at WBEZ, because it goes to some of the educators who are here, and because I think it's something that a lot of people are wondering about. And she asks, if teachers and staff are not paid, will educators still try to remote teach? And do you know whether CPS will block Google access? So I know there's a couple of folks here who wanted to pick that up.
I can speak to that, Eric.
Okay, okay, go ahead. I'll let Thad go first, and then we'll go to Lily and Siobhan.
Sure. So the first answer is to the question of whether teachers will report to work remotely, declining to go into the buildings under unsafe conditions. The answer is yes. Employees have a right to decline an unsafe work assignment and make themselves available to continue working in the manner they have for the last 10 months remotely, which is what over 2/3 of CPS parents have opted to have their students do. CPS's plan, as we've talked about, is patently unsafe. And our educators who have gone into school buildings this week have encountered deplorable conditions: buildings with no heat, classrooms that appear not to have been cleaned in months, workspaces with no air purifiers or air purifiers intended for 500 square foot spaces installed in rooms 4 times that size, and educators who exercise their rights to decline unsafe work assignments and continue to work remotely are entitled under our contract and state law to be paid for that work. It is illegal for CPS to withhold their pay as they're threatening them to. The CPS has said that these teachers will be considered absent without leave. How are you absent without leave if you are reporting to provide instruction to students who are logging in remotely and CPS is telling you not to? What is CPS telling those parents who are predominantly and disproportionately Black and brown, who have opted to keep their students remote? CPS is saying, we're not going to let your child see their teacher because their teacher refuses to risk their life. That doesn't sound like equity to me. It also doesn't sound legal.
Lily?
And I'll just, to answer the question of if I will continue teaching remotely, I don't have control or know if CPS will take away my Google access, but I can tell you that I have been a teacher for 13 years. I wanted to be a teacher since I was 5 years old. All I want to do is teach, and I shouldn't have to choose between a life and death health decision to teach my students. So yes, I will be logged on trying to teach every day that I'm able.
Thank you, Lily. And Siobhan?
I echo the sentiments of Lily. We have been getting threats all week long, and I have not stopped everything that I've been doing since August of 2005. And that is advocating for our children and teaching them to the best of our ability. And so I will be logging in as long as I'm allowed to do exactly what I've been called to do. And that's to keep our kids at our forefront of our minds and our hearts and teach our hearts out. Thank you.
Thank you, Siobhan. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. Thanks for those on Facebook and journalists, and stay tuned. You'll be hearing more from us in the coming days. Good evening.